In this video, I'm going to discuss an HTML page that has an SVG, Scalable Vector Graphics element, which is going to be populated by JavaScript, and it's going to make a design sort of inspired by, based on the work by Victor Vasarely, Pavo, that you see here. And so let me refresh the page. So here's my design, sort of inspired by this. Doesn't quite match up, but it's got some of the same ideas. So we have a bunch of, I'll say, concentric, well, at least they start off as concentric squares, but then we are sort of rotating them, and some rotation, some translation. And I got it sort of time dependent. His work is clearly static at this stage. Okay, so here's the HTML page. We've got a title, we've got a style. Keep doing. I've had a number of these. I have a variable in my style. So that starts with the variables, which starts with this colon root. And then I have this sort of hyphen, dash, half size. So I'm declaring a style variable here, and then I'm using that style variable to get half to, I want the width and the height of the SVG element to be twice half the size. So I'm making it a 600 by 600 square. So that's that square, overall square, 600 by 600. In the HTML, I have an SVG, which is empty, and everything else is script. I have the overall square, and then 18 more. So this 18 is telling me how many squares I have. So, all right. And then I have a number of things sort of oscillating back and forth. So I'm rotating a little. I'm rotating, and I have the amount of rotation sort of oscillating. And then I have some translation to sort of get what I would say is the concentric, originally concentric squares, and then I have a little additional translation, and I have some horizontal, though it gets not quite horizontal when it is rotated, but if it weren't rotated, it would be, there's some horizontal and vertical, and I've got them all oscillating with a slightly different frequency to sort of, let it sort of explore the space a bit. I have a timer ID and a time, so I'm going to have the rotations and the translations dependent on this time. So I have a time variable. Here in this M42, I am getting that style variable. So I want to relate that style variable up there in the style called half size. And then I want a corresponding JavaScript variable. And so I'm getting that, I'm calling that here M, and I'm getting, so this is the way to get from a JavaScript version of a style variable. Okay. I am getting my half size, my M, dividing it by num. And so this is saying how sort of some parameter that would be involved in making all of these rectangles that would, okay. And then I have set interval, and I'm calling the function Pavo, every 33 milliseconds. and everything else is that function. I am incrementing my time. I'm clearing out anything that I might have had before. I am making a black rectangle that's 0, 0, 2, and m is the half size, so 2m is the full size, so the full width, the full height filled with black. So that makes sure that the outermost, I'm filling the edges with black. And then I have a loop, and I am looping through and making my more interior rectangles. I'll give them the same width and height, so they will be squares. And I want the ones that I add later, I want to put down the bigger ones first so that they are not hidden by the smaller ones. So I'm going to work my way in sort of from a larger size to a smaller size. So my width is 2m minus 2i times delta. So I'm going to take a little bit off from each edge. So that's 2m is the full size. I'm taking off a delta from each side, and they're multiplying that by I. So each one comes in a little bit more. So each square, each rectangle has smaller width and height as we go in. And I am positioning them at sort of half that. So my original rectangle square that I'm making is centered at is 0, 0 is its center. When you the normal attribute for a rectangle, the x and the y are the sort of upper left, and so I didn't want it to be 0, 0, 0 or something like that. I wanted it to be such that I wanted the x to be sort of minus half the width and minus half the height, so that the center of the circle is at 0. And this just helped me understand better when I rotate. It sort of helps me control the rotations, then I know what I'm rotating about. So I'm in the loop. I made the square. Each consecutive one is a little bit smaller. I center it for now such that it adds 0, 0. 0, 0 is the middle of the square. Okay. And now I just have this I modulus 2 sort of alternating back and forth to get me my black and white squares. So the fill is black and then the fill is white. So I'm going back and forth there. And then I have a transform attribute, and I have a rotate and a translate. And so I just chose 1.2. This is an angular rotation, and that is in degrees. So the amount of rotation increases with I, my counter, and 1.2 is just a number that I sort of came up with that sort of an amount of rotation where each rotated square was still within the next larger square. So I didn't want to rotate too much and sort of take it out of that idea of one being contained in the next. So 1.2, I mean, there's probably some more precise value that I could come up with, but that was just sort of playing around. 1.2 kept sort of each square or within the other squares. It gets a little tight occasionally, but that value seemed to always keep them there. Again, and there's a little bit more rotation as we go deeper in. So this little rectangle, this little square in the middle is the one that gets rotated the most in what I'm doing. Okay. And and I'm also multiplying it by math cosine W1 or omega 1 times t. So that is that the rotation is the amount of rotation is oscillating. So we see that that's sort of rotated positively and negatively and sort of sloshing back and forth. I am these right now, this is the black squares, and I am translating them m plus 2I times delta. So the 1m and 1I times delta, that gets me just undoes this. And then I have an additional I plus delta to sort of make each one sort of over a little bit. Okay. But that was the black ones. The white ones have an additional, the rotation is the same, but I have an additional I have an additional sort of rotation here. So I have the m plus 2I delta, but I have an additional translation that is oscillating, sloshing back and forth, and both horizontally and vertically with different amounts with different angular frequencies here. So that is this, that's what gets them, the translation part is what gets them sort of a little bit closer together. Okay. So, and then here we are, and then I add it. So there we are at the bottom. So here was again, my inspiration. Here was what I came up with. We have the sort of concentric squares and some translation and some rotation. It never quite looks like Vasarely's, but I think it captures some of the basic idea. And then he's got other versions of these with colors, so I could have had some color, some, instead of just having black and white, I could have some color, I could have some various lightness and so on. But that's what I wanted to show you. Thanks for your attention.